The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Football fans, the time is now.
Give me a hell yeah!
For the football show you never knew you wanted. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Broken Helmet.
Coming to you live on tape on this Monday, January 19th, 2026. It is the Broken Helmet. Rich Eggy here behind the wheel, and to get in touch with the show, you can reach us at brokenhelmetshow@gmail.com or on X at Broken Helmet Pod. So, Divisional Round is now also history, as we had all 4 games take place this weekend, to Saturday to Sunday, and now we get to collect all of our thoughts as we prepare for the championship weekend set to take place next Sunday, 3 o'clock and 6:30. So, what did we get? It was good. Was it great? Probably not, but it was enough to entertain us over the long weekend. Some was fantastic. Obviously, the theatrics of Sunday night were spectacular, top of the charts, while some of the other games, not so much. But overall thoughts is that we're probably at where we want to be with the playoff contenders. The only thing that kind of sits wrong right now is the fact that the Broncos end up getting that win and then immediately thereafter find out that they've lost Bo Nix for the playoffs, which is just a complete and utter gut punch. Because, look, Bo Nix probably is not a Hall of Famer. It might just be a career average quarterback. Who knows? Maybe 2-3 years from now, he just completely kerplunks. Don't know. But without him, I don't know what the Broncos are going to do on offense. I mean, Jarrett Stidham, maybe Sean Payton can create something that makes the offense palatable. I don't know. But it was really unfortunate because without Bo Nix, and maybe even with Bo Nix, I think what people probably wanted was the best player in the playoffs continuing on to the next round. And that's Josh Allen. Now, Josh Allen didn't have a great game, but, again, he's Superman. He puts on the cape, et cetera, et cetera. He is the Bills' best player in the playoffs right now. Caleb Williams probably might be pushing him a little bit based on his performance past 2 weeks. Again, that's a little questionable too, because for all the great throws he had, and we'll get into all of that, there were a couple other ones that, questionable. I know, as I wrote on Twitter, it's against NFL regulation to say anything bad about Caleb Williams, but there's probably a couple of throws here and there that he'd want to get back. And he'd probably admit that too, but whatever. So you lose out on Allen being in the playoffs continuing on, and his replacement ends up being a Bo Nix-less Broncos. So that's unfortunate. But otherwise, if you think about the other 3 teams that continue on, you have the Patriots, easy winner over the Texans. You have the Seahawks, easy winner over the 49ers. You do not want to see the Texans and the 49ers in the next round. 49ers just way too beat up. And the Texans, look, I heard everybody and their goddamn brother talking about the Texans. Texans defense, blah, blah, blah. They beat the Patriots. When they beat the Patriots, they're going to end up going to the Super Bowl because they're going to destroy the Broncos with that defense. And I'll just quote my dad, who calls after every weekend of football, especially after the Texans play, and simply says, that CJ Stroud guy's no good. He kind of stinks. Yeah, he's definitely playing that way right now. Stroud, great rookie year. The next 2 years has gone down, and has had 2 back-to-back horrific games. And that didn't stop everybody from talking about the Texans or as though they were going to win this game because their defense was just that good. You got to play 2 sides of the ball, right? And unfortunately, what you saw this past weekend is the same thing you saw last weekend, where the difference was last weekend you were playing against Aaron Rodgers, who was basically crippled in that game and couldn't get it done. And this game, you were on the road going up against Drake May in New England. Huge difference. Huge difference. Which is why I picked New England. I thought New England was my best bet of the week. Not that I know anything. I've had a terrible year wagering, but that was the one game I felt most confident in. Seahawks should have been the game, right? Because that one was a snoozer. But everybody was all over the Texans, and obviously there's that now famous picture of the entire ESPN NFL crew. Not that anybody gives a shit about that crew anyway, but they all picked Houston, and they were all no good. So Houston ends up bowing out. You get Drake May to continue. Like I said, you're out with the Texans, you're out with the 49ers, you get the Seahawks and the Patriots, and then you get the Rams and the Bears. Rams continue on, the Bears end up taking the exit. So the Bills and the Bears are out. Obviously, you probably want the Bills in there now with no Bo Nix. And I think that if you are an NFL fan and you want the best product out there and you want the best game to watch, the Rams is the team that you wanted in there. It has been fun as shit to watch Caleb Williams and the Bears pull all of these rabbits out the hats, right? But, I mean, really, do you expect that to continue for another 2 rounds in the conference championship game and then in the Super Bowl? Because they have not won any other way other than what you saw the past 2 weeks, which was being down or a close game and having to come from behind in last seconds, literally in the last seconds of this past game against the Rams with a ridiculous play. Ridiculous play. Fantastic throw. Horrendous defense. And something that, I mean, if he tried to do that 10 times, he probably completes it twice. Maybe 20% chance of completing that. I mean, just ridiculous. But I can't see the Bears continuing on like that and actually winning a championship. While I think the Rams played awful. Awful. They played terrible. I do think that the fact they were playing in Chicago in 20-degree weather had a little something to do with that. I could be wrong. But last year they went into Philadelphia, almost won that game, but ultimately, if you watch it, and I watched that game a couple of times last year, the cold was a factor there, and there was no argument against it. The cold was a factor there. This game was 20 degrees. I say this game here, it's up on NFL Network right now, so I have a rewatch as I'm going into the show here. But this game, same thing. 20-degree weather. The Rams did not look good. They go into Seattle. Weather, obviously, will be a factor if there is weather to be a factor, right? And you know what I mean? Not a dome stadium. So that made no sense, Rich. But should they go into Seattle and weather is moderate, give them a 40-degree day, no rain, none of that, I think you see an infinitely different performance out of the Rams. Now, there were other issues in that game for Los Angeles, but as I'm just talking high level here, the Rams are the team that you want to go into the next round. I think if you want the best Super Bowl, you're going to want Rams-Pats in the finale. Broncos have no quarterback. You don't want to see them. So you want to see the Patriots. That thought is as much of a lock as you could get. On the other side, sure, Seattle, who I have been wrong about all year long. All year long. I couldn't have been more wrong.
You're an idiot.
That's exactly what he is.
I continually bet against them, pick against them. I'm going to do it again this week. I love the Rams in this spot. And much like me talking about San Francisco and possibly having a shot and Salah going in there and having a game plan and them, covering the 7 points, I mean, could not have been more wrong. And what's funny is the game played out exactly how it played out 2 weeks ago, which was San Francisco at home playing for the number 1 seed, as Seattle was too, and then just getting throttled, like just chopped up. Seattle just blew their doors off. Wasn't even fucking close. I mentioned on the show, I tweeted the same thing. I said, this game is not close. Seattle is infinitely better, and it's not close. And for whatever stupid reason, because of Darnold and this whole oblique thing they talked about, and the fact that San Francisco somehow beat the Eagles and looked good doing it, I gave them some kind of credit. And that game was over from the kickoff when it got ran back. And then it was just all downhill from there. And you just start watching it, and in my head, you stupid motherfucker, what are you doing? How could you possibly pick this team again? Like, stop going with them. And I think what I said was I thought they might lose, but they cover. It doesn't matter. I did not think that game was going to be as much of an onslaught as it was. And that was just, it was criminal. It was criminal. It should have had an X rating. You should not have seen it on TV. That's how bad it was. But, Seattle moves on, beating San Francisco. San Francisco takes the exit. So as much as I like Seattle, and I don't like Seattle, I mean, as much as I like their defense, I like their coach. I love their coach. I still think you want the Rams versus the Pats in the final. Because I think Seattle, Patriots, look, you're going to have, good storylines and narratives with both of these because you're going to have the recent Super Bowls to refer back to. Rams, Pats, Seahawks. Although everything's different in the games, coaches aren't there, players aren't there. It's just different. But it'll make fun for TV, and they'll do some kind of throwbacks and stuff. If it is Pats, Seahawks, I imagine they might try to interview Belichick. He'll probably say no, fuck off. Maybe they try to interview Carroll. Maybe he also tells him to piss off. Who knows? But you could do that whole thing, et cetera. Where they know Russell Wilson and Brady and him. Anyway, my concern with the Seahawks again is just I will not. I can't. I just can't believe that Sam Darnold is functional. It's been 2 years. There is nothing at this point right now, currently with his performance, that would reinforce the belief that he's dog shit. And I can't get it out of my head because I just saw him play for the Jets, and it was really bad. But there is this kind of new development in the NFL where the quarterbacks now, they have this chance to develop. And maybe they always did. I'm a 80s, 90s kid. So I saw a lot of good quarterbacks, a lot of shit quarterbacks. I don't ever remember watching quarterbacks really develop. They kind of they hit in the first couple of years or they didn't. Some just meandered, through their careers and were just middle of the road. Some guys did have that one good year somewhere in their career, But for the most part, like, you know the good guys, you knew the bad guys. They came out of college. They were pretty functional once they went under center, and you knew what to expect. This whole development of Sam Darnold, yeah, Baker Mayfield, another story where terrible from the get-go, same draft class, and develop over time. It just feels foreign to me, and because of the historical time frame I have watching football, I don't believe it. I don't believe that you can see this happen. But there are definitely a lot of differences in the game nowadays compared to what it used to be back in the day that maybe does allow for this development of shitbox quarterback to completely functional, if not successful, right? Like, not just functional, but successful. So because of that, I have doubt in Darnold, and that kind of prevents me from really embracing the fact that Seattle would go into a Super Bowl and do really well. But the defense is really good, and as a team, that team is great. Now, the Seahawks did suffer a tough one today. Zach Charbonnet gone, tore his ACL in that game. He won't be there. Now, I mean, K9 has been the guy, but Charbonnet has had big plays throughout this year, right? And so it's unfortunate to lose somebody that late in the playoffs. Crazier to lose your quarterback. I mean, that one is like head spinning. That's head spinning that Knicks went out. I think I wrote probably the craziest NFL playoff story you've heard since Barrett Robbins, right? The quarterback of the team that just that is going to the conference championship lost their quarterback on the second to last play of the game for the rest of the postseason. Like, broke his ankle, surgery, out. Like, on a play, probably they could have done any number of different runs, rather than his scramble. And I can't remember the play offhand if it was a design scramble or it was a pass that broke down and then he rambled out. But, he ended up, could have been an RPO, whatever it might have been, but he scrambles to the left, he plants, he goes up, and that's it. Broke his ankle on the play. And I mean, it seemed so innocent when it happened. You were just kind of like, that's where he broke his ankle. But anyway, so now you end up having Charbonnet fall for the Seahawks, Knicks for the Broncos. Obviously, the Knicks injury way worse, but it's unfortunate that Seattle will lose one of those two in the backfield for them going forward. So that was kind of just top level. We'll get into the games coming up. We'll start off, though, looking at our wagers from last week because I did it right.
Big money!
More than happy with what took place last week. So let's get into that here.
First down.
So as you will see, that we went into the week a little banged up. We had, obviously I talked about it before, but those unfamiliar, my brother and I take a $10,000 bankroll, and then we end up wagering against that. We have some long form bets, long season long, whatever. And we take those off the top. Then we roll the rest. We bet each week. We figure out how we do, measure it against the margin, all the rest of it. And I've had a terrible year. So I was down to $3,000 of my initial 10. I think of that 10, I spent about 15 or $1,700 on long season bets, and the rest of it put all together at the beginning of last week was $3,000. So I ended up throwing down 1,500 going into the week. Ended up getting a super solid return. I got 3,200 back, and the big ones, I probably should have capitalized more on my wagers because I had some solid picks throughout, not all of the games. San Fran, I was ice cold. But I will go through each of the picks that I had for each game as I look into each game, but here's what I did decide to wager on, and it worked out. I'll give the ones that didn't first. I went with Ingram for a touchdown. I should have went the other way on that one. I had San Francisco's defense for a touchdown. Didn't matter. San Francisco did nothing. I had Trayvon Henderson, and I tried to ladder him for all of his reception yardage, and he didn't really have a good game at all. He had some production rushing, but not receiving, and that is the way that I went there. And then I tried to do two different parlays with 6.5 spreads on two teams. The first team I picked for both of them was Denver because my thought process was Denver's 1.5 here. Buffalo collapses. Josh Allen just can't get it done. And Broncos at home end up taking it, win by a touchdown more. They did not, so that crushed the second half of the parlays. And the second half of those was taking San Francisco by 6.5 and Seattle by 6.5. And unfortunately, the Broncos didn't capitalize. Seattle did. So, I guess if you were looking at it, I could have went, the Patriots with that other side. I ended up going with Denver, and so that killed those two. But yeah, that was unfortunate because the Denver and the Seattle was $100 with a return of 569. I would have liked that, but regardless, none of those came in. So what did come in is I had three. We'll start small and dial it up. So I had Harvey on his receptions ladder, not reception, but receptions yardage, and that ended up coming in. I had put $75 down, 25 on each of the three tiers that I had identified, and that ended up bringing back 263. What was crazy about that one is that I have to say thank you for the overtime because the RJ Harvey prop hit on the one dump out early in OT. He got it, ended up, tearing it up field, I think like 20 yards or something. And that ended up hitting everything that was in the ladder that I needed. So that was huge. So that I kind of lucked into. The second bet I had was a money line and two props that I rolled together. That was Allen over 225. That was good. I had Higgins over 38.5. That was good. And then I rolled that into New England money line, and that was a surefire lock. So those three put together brought in a winner, and that was 100 to pull back 637. And then my bet of the week was New England money line plus the Los Angeles Rams money line. I put those two together for plus 131, put 1,000 down, pulled back 2,300, about 2,341 to be exact. And you put it all together, and I ended up landing at a positive 1,700 for the week. I pulled back 3241, but when you measure that against everything that I laid out, I was net positive about 1,741. So that ended up bringing me up to 4740. And that brought my margin to, what are we looking at there? Just minus, negative 50%. But that was way better than it was before I went into the week because I think, if I'm not mistaken, before I went into the week, it was negative 70 something. Yeah, it was terrible. Terrible. It was negative 70 change. So it was a solid hit, and I was more than happy with that. So it was a good weekend altogether. I had wished maybe that the Denver thing hit because that would have brought in a little bit extra cash. But when you have had such a bad week, you're more than happy to see your diversified bets come in somewhere. And I still parlayed, which is again junky betting, but whatever, they came in. So I'm not going to complain about it, when it hits. Complain about it when it loses, but when it hits, I'll take it. So that was the recap of the wagers. We'll get into the games. We'll do AFC, NFC, and then we'll just take a quick look at the week ahead of us, and then we'll punch out.
Second down.
So for the first game, we'll go to the less of the two. Right? And so we will fire up with what was just an awful, terrible stinker game on Sunday at 3:00. And that was the Pats versus the Texans, which was the CJ Stroud disaster game. I mean, it was, I don't know, you're watching CJ Stroud play, and
It was the worst thing I've ever seen.
Thanks, Mike. It probably was. You could go across Twitter and look at all of these stats, and the stats were so bad. Like, people were talking about how it was like historically awful. Like passing percentages and QBRs and passer ratings. I mean, it really, you're looking at it here. His QBR was 21.1. His rating was 28. 4 interceptions. 4. One more. I gave him 5. 4 interceptions. 20 for 47 for 212. I mean, it was just a horrible. Here's the problem with the Texans. Stroud's off, right? Something's wrong with him. He is digressed over the past 3 years. D'Amico Ryans, I'm personally not sold on. He was a quality coordinator for 1 year. He was a linebacker coach for 2 years. And then he ultimately became he was defense coordinator? No, linebacker coach for 2 years, D coordinator for 1 year when Saleh took off, right? So Saleh takes off, and then Ryans takes over. And then all of a sudden he's anointed the best thing going. This guy's going to be the shit. He gets the Texans job, and to his credit, he has had 3 years of 10-7, 10-7, and 12-5. 3 playoff appearances. I think he's had a win in each of the playoffs. So he's 3-3. Can't really argue with the results. Solid results. But the question becomes is, were those wins because of him or because it was a really talented team? Where does D'Amico Ryans fit in to the success of that team? Or, I don't know, was it a little bit of luck? I mean, you don't know. I am on the opinion that I think his win totals have been more than his actual coaching potential and ability. I think he's probably a better defensive coordinator than he is a head coach, but it's just my opinion. In this game, I'll tell you, I think the one thing that really looked poorly on Ryans was the fact that they went into halftime with CJ Stroud having one of the worst halves of football ever. Not only like a bad half of football, but it just looked like he shouldn't even be in the league. If it wasn't CJ Stroud and that was, I don't know, like a backup, you would expect that like a backup quarterback. Tommy DeVito. If he was Tommy DeVito, right? His name was Tommy. It was Tommy DeVito. Just flip-flop it. Just take an eraser, wipe out CJ Stroud, put in Tommy DeVito with that. People would have said, of course, it's Tommy DeVito. He's terrible. Like, look at the things that he did. Like, you got to bench him because it's Tommy DeVito and he's throwing balls up, just chucking them up for grabs. Just such a bad half of football. You'd never put him back in there. But it's CJ Stroud, and so for some reason they kept him in there. There was not one piece of evidence in those 2 quarters of football that would have allowed any coach worth their salt to keep him in. Yet Ryans did. And so I think that ends up being the biggest question marks for Houston now after that performance is Stroud's coming up on his next contract. Is he really the guy? Again, great rookie year. Everybody talked it up. The NFL is different now, though. I mean, the way that the NFL works, these rookie quarterbacks can come in there and make a little bit of a splash. Can it continue is the question. And for Stroud, it's kind of gone backwards. Now, do you want to pay a quarterback? Because the way that it goes, with the exception of a couple quarterbacks that have come along here and taken less, right? Most quarterbacks just go, I'm up next. I get paid more than the last guy. That's it. I'm me. He was the quarterback before me. He made X. I'm X plus 1. So give me the cash.
Big money!
I don't want to give that to CJ Stroud. I don't. Now, maybe Stroud comes in and he's like, I'll take a little bit less. It rarely happens. And I highly doubt that he would turn around and take less. Maybe he doesn't have a choice. I mean, next year is going to be pivotal. But with the question mark behind him and some of these decisions that you see in D'Amico Ryans make, now Ryans is fine. I think that the Texans would have to have a really horrendous year next year for there to be D'Amico Ryans fire talk. The concern you would have as a Texans fan, however, is this going to become another Steelers, Ravens, mid-2000s Giants Tom Coughlin thing, right? Where the team just isn't really getting it done, and you want to cut bait and go and turn the page, but there's just enough success to keep the coach and try it again, right? And for Coughlin, it was different than Harbaugh and Tomlin because Coughlin had horrific years, but then he would turn around and win a Super Bowl, and it's like, oh, now we're stuck. I mean, the guy just won a Super Bowl. And then he won his second Super Bowl, and it was like, oh, man. So it's like, well, if we get 4 or 5 wins for 3 years in a row, and then we get a Super Bowl, what do you do? But that seems to be the biggest risk for NFL teams right now is they get stuck in these meandering, middling coach, quarterback combinations that you just can't break the cycle. And which is why you see the Bills this year finally say, that's it, you're gone. McDermott, we'll see you later. We have had enough. Harbaugh, we've had enough. Tomlin. I mean, other teams have had a quicker trigger finger. McDaniels out the door a couple of years. And obviously the Giants have done this, every 2 years. They don't go on 18, whatever. What was Tomlin? Another 18? Tomlin was 18, yeah. 18 and Harbaugh was 17, right? Years with their team. Which is crazy because now that you look at it, I'm looking over the side here. I got a chart with the head coaches from last year. It's got to be updated. But Harbaugh, 17 years, gone. Tomlin, 18 years, gone. That leaves McDermott, 8 years, gone. That now leaves Andy Reid as the only coach with over 10 years of not experience, but a 10-year tenure with his team, greater than only double-digit tenure. And after him, the next 2 coaches who I would think are probably the best coaches in the game is McVay and Shanahan. They'll be going into years 9 each. And so you got those 2 at 9, and then Matt LaFleur is next with 7. Zach Taylor with 7. So that's the seniority of coaches right now. Is you're looking at Andy Reid, Zach Taylor, Sean McVay, and Kyle Shanahan. Did I say LaFleur in there too? Everybody else just new blood. Sirianni will be going into his 5th year, and he'll be like kind of up there. I mean, Dan Campbell, 5th year. It's nuts. So, do the Texans fall in this trap? Year 10 with DeMeco Ryans and CJ Stroud, and it's like it just doesn't amount to much. And I think those are the concerns with the game from Sunday. As for the Patriots, I don't know. There's really nothing to worry about right now. This is on a rocket ship going straight up. Drake May, did he have the best game in the world? Statistically, no. But when you're watching the game, he got it done. He got done what he needed to. Made big plays. It was a solid game. They have a backfield that they're more than happy utilizing. Pound the turf with Stevenson, throw Henderson in there for that change of pace, maybe a big hitter. And then a wide receiver crew that, when you look at it, Booty, Diggs, Douglas, Hunter Henry, who I thought Hunter Henry was going to have a bigger game, and definitely did not. But kind of lunch pail. I mean, Diggs, obviously, at his peak, was a superstar, right? I don't know if Diggs will end up becoming a Hall of Famer, but that might be because of just his circumstance. He not spent those years in Minnesota sitting behind Adam Thielen, of all fucking people. Adam Thielen more or less beat out Stephon Diggs for the number 1 wide receiver slot in Minnesota, which is crazy. It's crazy. But lunch pail group here, very Vrabel. I think the Pats are more than happy with this roster. And then obviously on the defensive side of the ball, a couple of draft picks, a couple of free agent additions, and they had a phenomenal game on Sunday. And now they will go on the road and most likely beat up on a Broncos offense that has no quarterback. Has an expatriate in Jarrett Stidham as a quarterback. And there's really not much to talk about in this game because it was over before it started because CJ Stroud was just that bad. The Patriots did go out there and play well. Their defense was phenomenal. But there was nothing that the Texans could have done with CJ Stroud having a performance like that. And I guess if there was a concern for the Patriots is that as bad as Houston was, that game was 21-16 in the fourth quarter. It was a 5-point game. It felt like it was a 50-point game, and it was only 5 points. If you want to have some kind of concern, if you were New England, it was that this game should have been an utter blowout. It was a comfortable win in the end, but it was way closer than it should have been. And so going into Denver, I think you're going to have to figure out a way to capitalize on the ineptitude of the other offense should Stidham have a miserable game under center, similar to CJ Stroud. So that was game 1 of the AFC. The other AFC divisional game was the better of the two. And that was the Bills-Broncos. Broncos victorious in this one in overtime, 33-30. Look, Josh Allen didn't have his best game. Without Josh Allen, there would have been no game. Bo Nix, you look at his stats, and they're not bad. I thought he was very average. Very average. But the team was able to get done what they needed to. Had some big plays here and there. The defense did enough. Yeah, this is going to come down to people arguing about a couple of big plays. And so I'll talk about the one big play, and that was the interception. And I don't know how anyone really thinks that that was anything other than an interception. And I'll explain here real quick. Ball goes up. Cooks goes up. Cooks gets the ball, but he's airborne. So he's got to maintain possession through hitting the ground. When he hits the ground, his helmet smashes into the turf. His arms go completely limp. Had the D-back not had his arm around the ball, and that was just Brandon Cooks on his own, he would have fumbled the ball to the turf and it would have been an incomplete pass. That's what would have happened. You can't argue it any other way because it's right there on the TV screen. When his head hits the ground, his arms are completely limp. The ball would have rolled out. If you want to say it was a complete pass, then, and let's say there was no defender there, even if it was a complete pass, then it would have been a fumble because the ball would have just went on the turf and then been rolling around because he would have fumbled the ball. He would have coughed it up. There, you can't find a way in my mind to make me think, yes, he caught the ball, his knee was down, it was a tackle, and that was the end of the play. There's no way. There's no way. Because he knocked himself out. It's on the TV screen. Like, you can see his arms go completely limp. So if he couldn't maintain possession through the ground, it's incomplete. And if you want to make it complete, then it would have been a fumble had nobody been there. So the only reason it's not an incomplete pass is because the defensive back has his arm around the ball, so it's still a live ball, and then he rolls around and he picks it up. The ball hasn't hit the ground. That's an interception. Boom. Done. Period. People then tried to compare it to the Devontae Adams play last night. That's completely different because Adams caught the ball, kind of had it for a football move, was tackled and then went to the ground, and that's forward momentum that stopped. Then they ripped the ball out of his hands, but the play was over. Completely different. The Cooks play was a fluid play with the receiver up in the air, having to come through the play, hit the ground, and maintain possession through the ground contact. So, I mean, they made a big deal about it, but I just didn't think that it was anything other than a great play and a great interception, right? I just didn't see it. There was a couple of other flags that came along toward the end that everybody was up in arms about. I agreed with the Tre'Davious White. And Tre'Davious White, like, losing his mind at the end of the game, like, all right, fine. You're flipping out because it's an overtime. You know they're going to kick the field goal and it's over. But, like, let's simmer down now. Simmer down now. Right? Throwing your helmet and all that. You tackle them. Like, you could make as big a stink as you want and try to play it off and make the public and the TV screen and everybody watching think, oh, man, he's really mad. He must not have done it. No, you did it, dude. You fucking tackled the wide receiver before the ball got there. There is the comp against, I forgot who it was from the Bills that was going. Was it Cooks again? Maybe it was Cooks. Maybe Shakir. I don't remember, but it was a play in the back of the end zone. I didn't think they were the same, although there was definitely contact from the Broncos D-back on that. I thought the difference was, I don't know if that ball was necessarily catchable. That ball seemed to me like it was sailing out the right side of the end zone. And I don't know if that would have been caught had the contact not been there, right? So my stance on all of these penalties has been primarily the same. and that is if it's, if it's a factor in the play, okay, sure, throw it. If it has nothing to do with the play or, just eat the flag. Like, let's stop with all these flags and let the refs not be as pivotal to the results as they have been here this year. Let's go more so toward college football and let the dudes play. Just let them play. So I thought the one was a good call and then a good non-call. And I just didn't see the uproar against the referees so much that everybody else did that I had read on X. But, I do understand that you just don't want to see flags. And I think it was Nick Costas that I heard saying this, and I completely agree with his opinion, was if you're going to throw flags, throw them, but just throw them evenly. Be consistent with it. Don't not throw flags all game long, kind of let them play, and then in the end, when it's overtime, all of a sudden you throw all these flags and you're giving them just chunk yardage downfield when it's like all they're going for is a field goal. You just fucked up the whole flow of the game, and now instead of these teams playing against each other, they're playing against each other and you, the referee. So I definitely thought that the refs interjected themselves too much toward the end of the game. But I think the calls were good. So, again, in that game, it's unfortunate the way that it shook out with the Broncos going to overtime, winning the game, and then losing Knicks, because by losing Knicks, you probably would want Josh Allen and the Bills in there. It's unfortunate because you did have a couple of pivotal penalties late in the game. You had what I thought was a clean interception, but I guess there was enough ammo there to have everybody up in arms. But for the most part, I thought it was an entertaining game. Again, I don't know if it was well played, but definitely entertaining. Fought hard all the way to the end. It gave the fans an extra quarter of football to watch. You go down here and again, you look at Buffalo and, McDermott's gone. Shit canned him today. Brandon Beane is going to keep his job, is going to look for the next head coach. This is what Brandon Beane has given to McDermott and Allen for this year. Dalton Kincaid, Ali Shakir, Ray Davis, Dawson Knox, James Cooks, Brandon Cooks, right? Like Keon Coleman, Mecole Hardman, Curtis Samuel. And Gabe Davis out last week, Shavers out last week. But this is what you got. Like, it's not, you didn't get a lot. You didn't get a lot at all. So I was fine with the way that this played out. Again, I'd probably rather have the Bills in there, but the Broncos will be at home without any Bo Nix, and so that should be interesting to see. Going through some of the bets, you know what we'll do? I didn't do the Pat game, so I'll do both of them here. How did I do with my picks? And here are the results. I ended up going with the Broncos, so I was good there. I ended up going with the Patriots, so I was good there. As for props that I picked in the two games, in Houston and New England, I had Christian Kirk and Higgins for touchdowns. That's who I was looking at. Kirk was good for plus 270. Passing, I thought May would get there. I thought Stroud would get there. I don't remember if Stroud was 200 or 225. 200 was good. 225 was not. May was not good either way. Obviously, with Henderson, which is one of the props that I actually bet, that ended up being no good. As for yardage overs, I did hit Higgins. I had him 50-plus yards was plus 146. When I put it together in the parlay, I ended up just doing an over-under of 38.5 yards. Kirk and Henry, I both looked at over 50 yards. Both of those were no good. And then rushing, Stroud came up short. I was looking at him at 15 yards for plus 154. He came up with 11. And then Henderson, again, I talked about, just didn't get it done. So let's flip over to Buffalo and Denver, and I had a little bit of luck here. Now, I bet on Ingram, so that was no good. But the other one that I looked at, which I mentioned before, was Coleman. Coleman, touchdown, plus 600. If you had gone with it, I did not. Passing, I liked Allen over 225. Receiving yards, I talked about Harvey. He hit that ladder in overtime. And then Denver, I was also looking at that alt spread at 6.5, and that didn't come in. So did have some hits. Coleman, Allen over, Harvey's ladder, Kirk touchdown, Higgins receiving yards, all hit. So not terrible. I mean, you get some misses in there, but obviously, like with the Coleman one, that was big. That plus 600. I wish I went with that instead of Ingram, but I thought that Coleman was a flyer. What I should have done is I should have bet a little bit on Coleman. That would have been good. But so I was 2 for 2 with the two games and their spreads, and then I had a couple of winners throughout the parlays. The props that I picked out. So that was the AFC. The NFC.
Third down.
Was next up. And so for the first game, let's just go to the stinker. And that was the Saturday night game that was in Seattle. And that one, just like I said, was terrible from the get-go. That thing was not meant to be entertaining at all, which is unfortunate. Because as you can see, the final score ended up being 41-6. It was all Seattle from the kickoff, and it just didn't get any prettier. I mean, look at the Brock Purdy, 15 for 27 from 140. I mean, just awful. There was just no offense to be had. Rushing, Purdy had 37, McCaffrey had 35. There was Tungus blew out his Achilles possibly. I didn't even follow up to find out what happened to him, but he ended up going down, which then everybody started going crazy about the whole the substation, the electrical substation that's by their thing. And then as for Seattle, I mean, Darnold only had 124. It didn't matter. They just ran Kenneth Walker. Now, like I said, Zach Charbonnet gone. He ended up blowing out his knee, and so it's going to be Walker going on forward. But receiving, there was nothing because they didn't do anything. They didn't do anything through the air because Darnold was hurt, and they obviously didn't want to test him, and they didn't have to because this game was just such a snoozer. There's really nothing even to talk about. I guess you'll talk about Seattle and whether or not Seattle is going to be the team. Like, do they really have it? Is this going to be the year that Sam Darnold ends up fucking proving everybody wrong and just sticking it right up their collective asses, including mine, because he ends up winning? Who knows? I mean, I really don't know. I have not picked Seattle right all year. But there's nothing to talk about in this game. The 49ers, you hope that they'll lick their wounds, come back. They've got one of the best coaches in the game. They've got solid pieces there. McCaffrey's going to be another year older. That's going to be unfortunate as he starts to age there because he's had such a wonderful career. But, age is a killer. Father Time is undefeated, and, it will do the same to McCaffrey. I'll actually talk about the prop bets that I had selected for this game because it was, I don't know, what do they call it?
We call this place Loserville.
That's right. There was nothing. I got none of them right. My touchdowns were not right. My receiving yards were not right. I had Charbonnet, got hurt. Jennings, no dice. Defense, I thought Huff might get a touchdown. San Francisco, that minus 6.5 if everything went the wrong way. It was all just awful. There was nothing to be had. It was just picked straight losers.
Thanks for nothing.
You're welcome. But then, so let's just go to, and I picked the game wrong too. I had the 49ers. I said the 49ers, might lose, but they'd probably cover that 7. That wasn't even close. And so then we have the biggest game of the weekend, and that was last night's unbelievable spectacular between the Rams and the Bears. And It really was so much fun to watch. It was crazy. Now, again, I don't know if it was the best played game, right? Because the Rams really didn't play great. And Caleb Williams had some awful interceptions. And then obviously there's the DJ Moore route running fiasco that also contributed in the end there. But you couldn't really ask for any more theatrics in this game, as the Rams end up going up by a touchdown 17-10, and then Caleb Williams does that crazy fourth down running back to the 40 and then chucking up in the corner of the end zone and ended up capitalizing for the win. Here are my just general thoughts about the game. Right. Number one, Caleb Williams has one of the best arms I've ever seen in the NFL, which is not a shock to anybody. I'm breaking no fucking ground there. Everybody said the same thing. His arm really is crazy good. I've only seen a couple like it, and I don't know if I've seen any like it, to be honest. Marino was one. I feel like Mike Vick had a crazy arm, but I mean, this guy really, he just he'll go back there and on just 2 feet without moving, he'll just chuck the ball. He probably could throw it 60 yards downfield. It's nuts. And what's crazier though is that it's only his second year in the league. So he obviously isn't like a Hall of Fame quarterback quite yet. And you want to give him time to develop. It can't be too hard on him early on. But there is something that makes me utterly uneasy if he was my quarterback, because when he is in the pocket and, the fancy term now, in structure, you're kind of like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm just uneasy about him. He doesn't really look like he's in command. Like, he functions best out of structure. He wants to break out, run around either one of the tackles, extend the play, and then let somebody get open in a crazy area of the field and then just drill him because he's got this friggin' arm. Pause. And that's kind of where he's most successful. And I don't know, as a fan of the team, if I want that. Now, I personally am a Giants fan, and Dart kind of looks to be a little bit of that. So, am I happy with Dart? I don't know. It's Dart's first year. The guy barely played, got knocked out, put back in, was in a part of terrible. I got to wait and see a little bit more about Dart before you can actually evaluate him. I'd say next year would be like his Caleb Williams rookie year, and then so it'd be 2 years before he could really make it. There's that throw. I'm watching the replay here on NFL Network, and they just showed that throw. And so this will lead into it pretty good here. The out of structure stuff is great, but sometimes that out of structure stuff makes you really uneasy. There was a play in the game back to back. I think it was back to back. It might have been separated by a play, but Williams rolls right, extends the play like he likes to, and then he tries to sling it in. I forgot who he was going to. Maybe Luther Burden. Maybe it was a Dunze. And Durant breaks up the play, almost gets the interception. Where you were like, oh, man, like he kind of extended the play and then just had so much confidence in an arm that he made this bad shit pass that almost ended up being an interception. And then a couple of plays later, he sits in which is kind of a forewarning of what's to come, sits in the pocket, tries to go to the right, and I forget who he's looking for, but almost in the same area as DJ Moore. He threw it to somebody. Maybe it was going to Moore again. And Durant got the interception on the second one. So Durant breaks up a play, and I don't think it was back-to-back plays, but maybe it was a play or two later. Then he ends up and he gets the interception. So the extended plays is where Williams looks the best. And it's also the extended plays where Williams kind of more or less makes all of his mistakes. So it's damned if you do it, damned if you don't. And I guess that's the one concern. And one would think that as you get older and you mature in the NFL, those things will go away. And if he does manage to limit those bad plays, he really does have a chance to be something like crazy special. And frustrating to me because he's not on the Giants. And the Giants could have had him. They just knew how to lose, never lose well. But only time's going to be able to tell. And one would hope that he kind of breaks. And Ben Johnson will be able to try to put him in an offense that can capitalize on this stuff. Talking about Ben Johnson real quick, I thought both McVay and Johnson had shit games coaching. For one, Ben Johnson on the fourth down, if he had kicked the field goal, who knows what happens with this game. This game might land completely differently if he just took those points there. But again, tried for the fourth down, didn't work out. He said late in the game, or not the game, in the post-game presser, somebody he had asked. It was funny because I follow Rob Pizzola, and I forget the Hammer Network circles off. Whatever, he's all known on Twitter. One of the gamblings and football guys. But he had posted. I hope somebody asks Johnson about why he didn't go for 2 at the very end of the game, because that obviously has become a huge question. Is why not go for 2? Everybody likes going for 2. You were red hot. You could have won it. And somebody did ask Johnson why you didn't go for 2, and Johnson basically just said our short game and our goal line game and all of these like 3rd and short, 4th and short did not work out well all game long. So their trepidation about going for the 2 rather than going into overtime and trying to make something happen, right? Which I think is the best route to go. But you could see early in the game he wasn't taking that because he went for it on that 4th down, didn't get it, and that left 3 points on the field, which I probably would have taken the points. But again, I'm kind of old. I don't, I like to throw the dice in spots, right? Yeah, I kind of think of it like as poker, right? You kind of mix everything up like you do when you play poker. Take shots here, you're conservative here, you're trying to mix it up, and then there's, where do you have positive EV and all the rest of that bullshit. So with that 4th down, I would have kicked it because I would have wanted the points early. And then in the end of the game, regardless of how you were performing, I would have just taken the extra point and went into overtime, because in overtime, you have multiple ways to win. You're going to get the ball back, right? So the other team could score. They might not score. If they don't score, then it's your job to get nothing but a field goal. There could be a turnover, an interception. There's just, if you're confident in the way your team is playing, why wouldn't you go to overtime and try to capitalize on all the different ways that you could get ahead, right? Rather than just put the one play down and then you get it or you don't, right? I'm risk adverse that way, and I would not want to put everything on one play. I would want to give myself outs, right? And even if the Rams get the ball first and score in overtime, you have an out because you can try to match that touchdown. So I just wouldn't put everything on a single play. But that obviously was a big talking point today. Rex Ryan, of all people, he was like, oh, I would have went for 2. Of course I would have went for 2. Fuck off, Rex Ryan going for 2. Bullshit. I'm not a Jet fan, but I have to watch the Jets because I'm in the New York, New Jersey area. And so I was forced to watch him throughout those years. Rex Ryan is not going for 2 in that spot. No fucking way. Not a chance. Not a chance. So when I heard that, I just started chuckling. I was like, come on. People just say shit now, which, I mean, of course, that's what it's about, right? About clicks and, the big splash. Now, I talked about Ben Johnson. I thought some of his play calling throughout the game was a little rough. A lot of third third down and short, fourth and short. He was just running right up the middle with and then they play that in the stadium, which I didn't know, but I think that thing started as a viral video clip, right? I think the one guy doing one guy to the Lion King thing, and then I heard it in the background. I said, "Oh, they play it at home now." So I wonder. I don't know who that guy is. I wonder if he gets money for that or something. Probably you had to, right, to get licensed, or maybe not because he put it in the public domain. Regardless, I thought some of Ben Johnson for being this offensive savant. I thought some of his play calling was really lackluster in the game. Not more lackluster than Sean McVay. You want to see something about the Rams? I like the Rams better next week. This week, though, they were lucky to get out alive in this game. McVay, the Bears' weakness on defense was their rushing defense. And McVay just refused to rush the ball. Everybody online was talking about it. Warren Sharp's up there. He's posting every 5 minutes all these, these rushing stats and the lack of rushing stats from the Rams. It really was head scratching and then when they did run the ball, they did have solid, they had solid production. I mean, let's go to the box score real quick and see, because I don't even know if I've looked at it, but let's see what the Kyron Williams, 21, 87 on the ground for 4 yards a clip, 2 touchdowns. I do remember Warren was talking about Blake Corum. I think Blake Corum might not have had a carry in the first half, or maybe he had one. So just weird that you wouldn't try to pound the rock when that's their number one weakness, the Bears, is their rushing defense. And then Stafford, 20 for 42 to 258. And then you look, targets. He tried to hit Nakua. Nakua got 5 for 56, but there's nothing really to hang your hat on here. This was just, if you want to ask me, I think Parkinson, that one play was huge. I think it was the other guys that had the big plays. Now, Nakua had that big first down that ended up getting them a lot of yardage to get I think it was a first down, but it got him a lot of yardage and put him into field goal distance. But he wasn't as big a factor as I thought he would be, and some of these other ones, that Devontae Adams catch, holy shit. That guy was good. And I will say, I know it. My question on Devontae Adams' catch was, did he have actual possession of the ball while his feet were still on the ground? Because he kind of had it. It was juggling it, and he brought it in. I guess you'd have to watch it in full speed, which I didn't see. In the slow motion, it looks like it is super close. And I guess you get it because of the effort but my question would have been like, if he's bobbling it as he's bringing it in and his foot picks up, it's an incomplete catch, right? By the letter of the law. I thought it was a good call to be a catch. Crazy play. But that's how the Rams got by in this game, was by just getting like small plays here and there that were just big and then surviving more or less. I think, and basically, it was Caleb Williams having 3 interceptions in the game. That was huge. It was huge. 3 interceptions, 3 turnovers, and they were all on, like long downfield plays, right? Which I heard a couple people writing. I saw a couple people write about it today, but the question ended up becoming, if you're Caleb Williams or if you're Ben Johnson, do you need that 20-yard bomb there to DJ Moore at the end? Or were you better off just picking up 5, picking up 3, picking up 6, and just methodically continue to move down the field until you're close enough for a field goal? I think it was not the greatest coached game on either side, whether it was McVay and refusing to run the football, or if it was Ben Johnson and his play selection in these short yardages, or trying to get chunk yards down the end there. Specifically talking about that DJ Moore play. I don't know. Rams get out of it. I think they will be better next week against Seattle. You are going to have to go up against a big Seattle defense. As for Caleb Williams, you talked about him already. I'll talk about the DJ Moore play now, just because everybody else and their brother has. I wrote online afterward because originally when I first saw the ball go out, I was like, holy shit, man. He just drilled Cam Curl, right in the numbers with it. And I just wrote, here comes all everybody's going to yell at DJ Moore and they're going to say it was his fault for running the route. And they're not going to say anything about Caleb Williams because you can't. It's against league policy. Talk shit about Caleb Williams. And then they started showing the replays of it. I know Collinsworth talked about it almost immediately. And then when you see it, it is kind of nuts that that DJ Moore ran whatever fucking route that he did. Because blatantly, to me, it looked like he did not think he was going to get the ball. And so he was just running a bullshit route. And so he was out of place. If you're Caleb Williams, I just question throwing the ball there. And on top of that, you don't need the big yardage. But look, I mean, if that's the way the play is designed and DJ Moore should have been open if he was in the right spot, fine. That would have been huge. That would have gotten them in field goal range, and that would have been the game. They were just having so much success, getting yardage. Otherwise, I don't know why you try to hit the home run there, but whatever. DJ Moore, let me bring up, I got to bring this up because this was actually pretty funny. So when we go, I'm going to flip over to my X feed because I had it up here. DJ Moore, when he's running his route, like I mentioned, I don't think that he thought he was getting the ball. And so I posted this because look at him turn his head in double take when he realizes the ball is coming his way. I don't think in a million years he thought the ball was going his way. And he's just jogging downfield and he turns his head. What? Whoa! Ball's coming my way. Where I'm going to look. Oh, no. The ball's up in the air. I got it. Oh, too late. I mean, he was just jogging and look at him turn his head twice. What? Whoa, shit. He didn't think the ball was coming his way. Now, there's another all 22 camera angle of this. And in the other camera angle, this is the one knock on Caleb Williams. I don't think it was a well-thrown ball. I just don't. He threw it to a place and maybe DJ Moore was supposed to be there, but he lets go of that ball. And when he lets go of that ball, Cam Curl just breaks immediately to where he was throwing that ball. I don't know if DJ Moore was where he was supposed to be if Cam Curl doesn't grab it anyway. Everybody's talking about hypothetically if he flattened the route out and he continued to run or ran harder, he would have got to the place before Cam Curl. I don't know. When Williams throws that ball, Curl almost immediately gets on his horse and gets to the spot and makes a fantastic play. Fantastic play. And so, you want to point blame anywhere. I'd point blame it more and on Williams. More for obviously putting a half-ass effort in. But Williams, because I think it was a shit-thrown ball. You'd had seen him throw other bad balls in the game. I'll tell you, the one thing, and he'll obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, one would expect that he'll limit this going forward, but a lot of his deep balls, they'll sail. They just sailed. And like the interception in the first quarter, that was a ball that just sailed. Now, was his hand banged up? I don't know. I feel like I have seen enough of Caleb Williams that I think it's a thematic thing. I have just seen balls sail on him and I feel like that's because he has so much reliance on his arm. And then all of a sudden, maybe it's too much arm, right? The Cam Curl throw, I think it might have been too much arm. He threw it too far out and he right to a spot where Cam Curl had a better chance of getting it than DJ Moore, even if DJ Moore had run his route the way he was supposed to. I mean, whether or not that's true, I don't fucking know. That's the way they look to me. So, I think when you look at the Bears, I think, Johnson, Williams, Moore all deserve a little bit of a knock here in the loss because they all could have done something a little bit better. And then for the Rams, dude, if McVay and Stafford come and have a performance like they did in this game next week, there's not a chance in hell they win. Not a chance in hell they win. I think they do. I'll bet them, and I'll bet the money line. I'll probably bet them up, 2.5, maybe 2.5, 6.5, ladder them a little bit. But, they're not going to get it done with a performance like this. And they're not going to get it done with stupid fucking penalties like Verse hitting Williams super late. That was so dumb. Or with the secondary, not paying attention to the ball and getting into a hand fight with a tight end twice their size, only to get, not really pushed off, but lose the hand fight and then completely lose track of the ball and leave the tight end open in the end zone for a Hail Mary. I mean, that shit was nuts. If you're the defensive back there, why are you even trying to get into a hand fight with a tight end? He's twice your size. Just play the ball. Make sure you got a hand on the field for him. You should be just staring at Caleb Williams the whole time. Did he throw the ball? Where is he? Or where's this guy out? And then I don't know if it was Curl or whoever the safety was on the far side of the end zone. He's kind of like in no man's land. I know it looked like he was shading over to the receiver that was in the middle. I don't know who that was. It might have been Burden or somebody. But there was like 2 other Rams over there. Give your boy help over in the corner. What do you So I don't know. That was one of the worst fucking defensive plays I've seen in playoff football in such a big spot. It was nuts. It was really nuts, but a fantastic throw. So I'll go down here the props for this game because I ended up getting a couple here right. I had DJ Moore touchdown, good plus 330. Loveland and Ferguson were no good. But receiving, I had Moore 40-plus yards. I had Parkinson 25-plus yards. I had Menenge plus 15 yards. So I had 3 of the 4 receptions. And then rushing, Swift 60-plus yards and Caleb Williams 25-plus yards. So I had all of those. Unfortunately, I didn't put any of them in my wagers. So it's not good unless you bet it, but I had a couple of picks. So I was pretty solid in that Chicago game. That was easily my best one. I was good in Denver. San Francisco, I was over, and New England, Houston, I had a couple of picks. As for those NFC games, I was no good. I ended up picking the 49ers, and then I picked the Rams. Rams were 3.5. They won by 3. No good. Overall, for all 4 games, this is what you were looking at when looking at the sharps, the tickets, and the money pool. I was 2 for 2. The sharps were 1-1. Tickets were 1-3. Money pool was 1-3. The favorites were victorious 3-1 over the dogs, and the overs also were victorious 3-1 versus the unders. There was one home dog, that being the Bears, and that home dog ended up covering. Teases. All 4 favorites teased 1. Dogs were 2-2. Overs were 4-0. Unders were 2-2. So that's how it went. I had liked 3 games to tease. I liked 49ers, Patriots, and Rams. That almost ended up being my bet of the week. And then when I started measuring against the odds, it made more sense just to go Patriots and Rams money line. That's what I ended up doing, and I was better off for it because the 49ers would have screwed up all of my bets. And so that was the divisional round. That brings us to a forward look.
4th down.
At the NFL Conference Championships scheduled for next week. I mean, should they be good ones? I think you'll get one good one, and then I think you'll get one shitty one. I have absolutely, positively no faith that the Patriot-Bronco game is going to be fun. I think ultimately in the second half, it'll probably end up getting away from the Broncos. maybe they can just run the ball and command it. But I mean, the way the Patriots looked and the fact that the Broncos don't have their quarterback, I just don't know what you're going to get. And it reflective when they made the spread. The spread they made at -5.5 in favor of the Patriots. So the Patriots will be a road favorite by a nice chunk of change. Total there is going to be 41.5. I don't know. Right now, I'm pretty sure that I'd be going Patriots. I can't envision a world where I take the Broncos unless maybe, that they raise that spread up to like 8.5, 9.5, something like that. I mean, 4 points from now. I doubt they do that, but that'd probably be the only way I would even consider taking the Broncos. I don't know if I would take the Pats in the 5.5 or the Pats money line, or I don't know. But the Broncos, to get me to even think about them, that spread's going to have to jump up there quite a bit. I mean, 5.5, 6.5. You need points to stay in these games, and I don't know where the Broncos are going to get it. Maybe they do just run the shit out of the ball, but they're talking about J.K. Dobbins coming back. We'll see. I think the better of the two games is going to be the night game, the 6:30 game. Pats Broncos with 3 o'clock. Obviously, CBS. I have to deal with Tony Romo. Egad. We'll talk about all that kind of stuff once the season ends. But the 6:30 game will be on Fox, and that will be Rams Seahawks. Good one in that. Seahawks 2.5-point favorites. 47.5 is the over/under. And I like the Rams. That's going to be probably my pick of the week. There is going to be the Rams money line, or Rams 2.5, Rams maybe 2.5, 6.5, something like that. I do like Los Angeles getting to the Super Bowl. However, in order to do that, they're going to have to be able to figure out a way to find success against that Seattle defense. I have not given the Seattle defense enough credit all year. It has hit me in the wallet multiple times, and definitely with my picks, because if there's one team that I probably have bet against the most this year, Seattle is in the top 5, and they have, proven me wrong every single fucking week, and I hope it changes here. But definite lean right now, Pats, Rams, that's what I'd like to see as this Super Bowl. I think that's the best option for a good game. But we will see ultimately how it ends up playing out. So that's it. I think it's Monday night. It's getting late, and I am actually going to go watch one of my alma maters. I went to too many goddamn schools, but one of them was the U. And so I will be happily watching my Miami Hurricanes pulling off a NCAA championship here in Miami, a home game for them, going up against Indiana and Mendoza, so the Heisman Trophy winner. So all the best to everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and I will punch in with you guys again sometime this week. Or when I say you guys, I probably mean you guy, one person watching. You, that guy. Anyway, see ya.